The alarm screamed through the medical station at 0300 hours. Taemin dropped his coffee and ran toward the docking bay. He had been a medic for 6 years, but his heart still raced when emergency calls came in the middle of the night. Captain Wu Jin was already there, his face tight with worry. "Rexian warship," he said. "Pirate attack. They have wounded cubs." Taemin felt his stomach drop. Cubs. Children. The Vraxians were a warrior species, covered in thick exoskeletons that made them look like walking tanks. Their cubs were smaller, but still dangerous. More importantly, their biology was notoriously difficult to treat. The Vraxian ship landed with a grinding sound. Its hull was scorched and torn. When the door opened, Taemin saw adult Vraxians carrying small bodies. The cubs were broken. Their exoskeletons had shattered like glass. Blue blood leaked from the cracks. The Vraxian commander stepped forward. His name was impossible for humans to pronounce, so everyone called him Commander. He looked at Wu Jin and Taemin with what might have been desperation in his multiple eyes. "Our medics say they cannot be saved?" the commander said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "The damage is too severe. But we heard. We heard humans try when others give up." Taemin moved forward. There were 3 cubs. 2 were unconscious. 1 was awake and its eyes were wide with pain and fear. It couldn't have been more than 5 years old in human terms. "We'll try," Taemin said. "Bring them to surgery." The Vraxians carried the cubs inside. Taemin called for his team. Sojin arrived first. She was their xenobiology expert. She had studied 17 different alien species, but Vraxians were rare. They didn't usually trust other species with their medical care. "This is bad," Sojin whispered as she examined the first cub. "The exoskeleton isn't just armor. It's part of their skeletal system. When it breaks like this, it's like every bone in a human body shattering at once. Can we fix it?" Taemin asked. Sojin looked at him for a long moment. "I don't know. But we can try." They worked through the night. The exoskeleton pieces were scattered like puzzle pieces. Some were powder. Taemin had to use microscopes to see the smallest fragments. Human medicine had advanced incredibly in the last century, but this was different. This required patience more than technology. The conscious cub watched Taemin work. It didn't make sounds, but Taemin could see the pain in its movements. Every breath seemed to hurt. Vraxians were predators. They were taught to be strong, to never show weakness. But this was a child, and it was terrified. "Hey," Taemin said softly. "I know it hurts, but I'm going to help you. I promise." The cub's eyes focused on him. Taemin didn't know if it understood human language, but he kept talking anyway. He had learned long ago that his voice could calm patients, even when they didn't understand the words. He worked carefully, placing each fragment of exoskeleton back where it belonged. Sojin had developed a bonding agent that could fuse the pieces together. It would take time to strengthen, but it would hold. Hour after hour passed. The other medical staff rotated in and out, taking breaks. Taemin didn't stop. His hands were steady even when his eyes burned with exhaustion. The cub watched him the entire time. By dawn, the first cub was stable. The exoskeleton was still fragile, but it was whole again. Taemin moved to the second cub, then the third. Each one took hours of precise work. The adult Vraxians waited in the hallway. They didn't pace like humans would. They stood perfectly still like statues. But Taemin could feel their anxiety every time he passed them. 3 days later, all 3 cubs were awake. They were weak, and they would need months of recovery, but they would live. Taemin was exhausted beyond words. He had slept maybe 6 hours total. The commander came to see the cubs. He stood in the doorway of the medical bay and stared. The cubs were moving carefully, testing their repaired exoskeletons. The oldest one saw the commander and made a clicking sound. "You saved them," the commander said to Taemin. "Our own medics said it was impossible." Taemin shrugged. "We just took it slow. One piece at a time." "No," the commander said. "You did something we do not do. You refused to give up. Even when the task seemed impossible, you continued." The conscious cub that Taemin had worked on first approached him slowly. It reached out one clawed hand and touched Taemin's arm very gently. Vraxians were not known for gentle touches. "Thank you," the cub said in broken standard language. "You fixed me. You fixed us." Taemin smiled. "That's what we do. We fix broken things." The Vraxian ship stayed at the station for 2 weeks while the cubs recovered. During that time, the cubs talked constantly to each other and to any adult who would listen. They told stories about the humans who had saved them, about Taemin who worked for days without stopping, about Sojin who figured out how to bond their exoskeletons, about the other human medics who brought them food and talked to them like they were precious. Not just soldiers in training, the Vraxians were warriors. They respected strength and power. But they had never seen anything like this. The humans had taken what everyone else called hopeless and made it whole again. Not with weapons, not with force. With patience and care, when the cubs were finally strong enough to leave, they did something unprecedented. They thanked each human medic individually. They remembered every name. They promised they would never forget. The commander spoke to Captain Wu Jin before departing. "Our cubs will tell this story to every Vraxian they meet." And Vraxians talk to many species in the fleet. You have done something significant here. Wu Jin looked confused. "We just did our job." "No," the commander said. "You showed us something we had forgotten. That broken things can be mended. That there is strength in healing, not just in fighting." The Vraxian ship departed. Taemin watched it go from the observation deck. He was finally getting some rest. Sojin stood beside him. "Do you think we'll see them again?" she asked. "Maybe," Taemin said. "Or maybe not. Either way, those cubs are alive. That's what matters." But Taemin was wrong about one thing. They would see the Vraxians again. And not just Vraxians. The cubs kept their promise. They told everyone they met about the humans who mended broken things, and the galaxy was listening. Within a month, the first request came. A Keltharian ship had wounded crew. Their medics couldn't help them. They had heard about the human station, about Taemin and his team. Could they come? Wu Jin accepted. Then came another request. Then another. The trickle became a stream. Word spread through the galactic fleet like fire through dry grass. There was a species that could heal wounds others couldn't. A species that refused to give up on the broken. Tae-Min stood in the medical bay 3 months after the cubs had left. The room was full of different species, all waiting for treatment. He was exhausted, but he was also amazed. This was bigger than he had imagined. "We're going to need more staff," Sojin said. Beside him, Tae-Min nodded. "Then we'll get more staff. We have work to do." He moved forward to greet the next patient. It was beginning. The galaxy was bringing them their wounds, and the humans would do what they did best. They would mend them, one broken thing at a time. 6 months after the Vraxian cubs, the medical station on Theta 7 was unrecognizable. What had been a small outpost was now a massive complex. Ships arrived every day. Sometimes multiple ships in a single hour. Wu stood in the main surgical bay and tried not to feel overwhelmed. She had been a trauma surgeon on Earth, dealing with the worst injuries humans could suffer. But this was different. She was looking at a patient with 3 hearts, crystalline bones, and blood that changed color based on oxygen levels. "Doctor?" The nurse beside her was human, thankfully. His name was Hyeon Woo, though he was trained as both a nurse and an engineer. They needed people who could think creatively here. "I'm okay," Woo said. "Just give me a moment." The patient was a Keltharian. Its species was known for exploration and trade. They were peaceful, which made it worse somehow. This one had been caught in a mining accident. A collapsed tunnel had crushed its lower body. Keltharian medics had stabilized it, but they said the damage was too severe. The limbs couldn't be saved. Ji-woo had looked at the scans for 3 hours. She had consulted with Sojin about Keltharian biology. She had read every piece of research she could find. And then she had decided to try something that seemed impossible. "We're going to save the limbs," she told her team. One of the alien medics who had brought the patient made a sound of disbelief. "The bone structure is powder. The nerves are severed in 47 places. It cannot be done." "Watch me," Jiwoo said. The surgery took 11 hours. Jiwoo rebuilt the crystalline bone structure piece by piece, using a technique she had developed for human bone grafts and adapting it on the fly. The nerves were the hardest part. Keltharian nerves were more complex than human nerves, with multiple pathways for each signal. Hyun-woo assisted her, his engineering background proving invaluable. He understood systems and connections in a way that pure medical training didn't cover. Together, they mapped out each nerve pathway and reconnected them. When the Keltharian woke up 3 days later and moved its limbs, the alien medic stood in stunned silence. Jiwoo was too tired to celebrate. She just nodded and moved on to the next patient, because there was always a next patient. Now, in another section of the growing complex, Hyun-woo worked on something different. He stood in a massive hangar bay, looking up at a warship that had been declared dead. The ship was Vraxian, though not the same one that had brought the cubs. This one had been hit by weapons that melted metal and fused systems together. The Vraxian engineer beside him gestured at the damage. "We were going to scrap it. Use the parts for other ships." "But the crew?" The engineer paused. "The crew loves this ship. They have fought in it for 20 years. They asked if we could bring it to the humans. They said humans fix broken things." Hyun-woo walked around the ship slowly. He had been an engineer for 15 years. He had worked on everything from small shuttles to massive space stations. But he had never tried to repair something this damaged. "I'll need your help," he said to the Vraxian engineer. "You know this ship better than I do. You will try?" The Vraxian sounded surprised. "Of course I'll try," Hyun-woo said. "That's what we do." They worked for 3 weeks. Hyun-woo learned that repairing alien technology wasn't that different from repairing human technology. You had to understand the purpose, trace the connections, and find creative solutions. The Vraxian engineer was amazed at how Hyun-woo treated the ship almost like a living thing, talking to it as he worked. "On Earth," Hyun-woo explained, "we have a saying. Everything that's made has a spirit. You have to respect it if you want to fix it." The Vraxian engineer didn't fully understand, but he saw the results. Hyun-woo bypassed damaged systems, rebuilt melted circuits, and restored the ship's core functions. When the engines finally roared to life again, the entire Vraxian crew stood and made a sound that might have been their version of cheering. The captain approached Hyun-woo. "We thought she was dead. You brought her back." "She wasn't ready to die yet," Hyun-woo said with a smile. "She just needed someone to listen." The story spread faster now. Not just through the Vraxians, but through every species that came to the human station. A Keltharian who should have lost its limbs was walking. A warship that should have been scrap was flying again. And there were dozens of other stories, hundreds. Captain Woo-jin found himself in meetings with Galactic Council representatives. They wanted to understand what was happening. Why were so many ships diverting to human space? Why was a small medical station becoming one of the busiest locations in the sector? "We're just helping people," Woo-jin said. Confused by the questions, a council member, a being made of energy held together by a containment suit, spoke carefully. "You are changing the balance. Ships that should be returning to their fleets are staying here for weeks. Resources are being redirected." Some members are concerned. "Concerned about what?" Woo-jin asked. "We're healing their wounded and repairing their ships." "How is that a problem?" "Because," another council member said, "you are creating dependency. These species are beginning to rely on human aid. That gives you power." Woo-jin felt anger rise in his chest. "We're not trying to gain power. We're trying to help." "Perhaps," the first council member said. "But intent does not change outcome. We will be watching." The meeting left Woo-jin uneasy. He discussed it with Taemin and Jiwoo that evening. They sat in the small cafeteria that served human food, trying to relax after another exhausting day. "They're afraid of us," Woo said. Not because we're strong, but because we're changing things. We're just doing what's right, Taemin protested. I know, Wu said. But right can be threatening to people who are used to things being a certain way. More ships arrived. The human staff expanded rapidly. Earth sent more medics, more engineers, more supplies. They also sent something else. Teachers. Because the demand was so high, they needed to train other species in human medical techniques. So Jin found herself running classes for alien medics. She taught them about patience, about refusing to give up, about looking at problems from different angles. Some of the aliens struggled with the concepts. Their medical training was about efficiency and triage. Save who you can quickly. Don't waste resources on difficult cases. Human medicine was different. It was about fighting for every patient. Even when the odds were terrible, a Vraxian medic asked Sojin, "Why do you try so hard for patients who might die anyway? Wouldn't it be more efficient to focus on those with better chances?" Sojin thought about how to answer. "Because," she said finally, "we believe every life has value. And sometimes the patient who seems hopeless surprises everyone. We've learned not to give up too soon." The Vraxian medic looked confused but intrigued. "This is not how we were taught." "I know," Sojin said. "But maybe it's time to learn something new." Not everyone was happy about the human presence. Some species saw it as interference. Others saw it as weakness. A few saw it as an opportunity. Pirates began targeting ships going to human stations, hoping to capture advanced medical technology. Extremist groups from various species protested, claiming humans were corrupting traditional values. And in the shadows, some began to plan more serious opposition, but the flow of patients didn't stop. A Talvirian with genetic damage that should have been fatal. A Morvesh whose cybernetics had fused wrong with biological systems. A Keltharian whose memory centers were damaged. They all came to the humans. And the humans tried to fix them all. Ji Wu performed her 200th impossible surgery on a cold morning. The patient was a species she had never even heard of 6 months ago. When it survived and recovered, she felt that familiar mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. Haiyan Wu repaired his 50th ship. Each one taught him something new about alien engineering. Each crew treated him like a miracle worker. He tried to explain that it was just patience and problem-solving, but they didn't seem to believe him. Tae-Min worked 20-hour days and collapsed into bed too tired to dream. But he got up every morning and did it again. Because there were patients who needed him. Patients who had been told they couldn't be fixed. And he was going to prove that wrong, one person at a time. The cub's story had spread across the galaxy. Predator cubs told everyone humans mend broken things. Now the fleet was bringing them their wounds. All of their wounds. And the humans, with their strange philosophy of never giving up, were accepting them all. They were building something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. They just didn't realize yet how much resistance they would face. Or how much they would change everything. The first reports came from the outer rim. Ships were disappearing. Not destroyed, just gone. Then the survivors started arriving. Tae-Min was treating a Caltharian captain who had barely escaped. The captain was shaking, which was unusual for the normally calm species. "They don't destroy," the captain said. "They dismantle. They took my ship apart piece by piece while we watched. They took my crew's minds apart too. Made us forget how to trust each other. How to work together. By the time we escaped, we were fighting each other more than them." "Who are they?" Taemin asked. "The Rendari," the captain whispered. "They've returned." The name meant nothing to Taemin, but it meant everything to the older species. The Rendari were ancient. They had disappeared billions of years ago. Legend said they didn't conquer civilizations, they broke them. Systematically, completely, they left nothing but chaos and ruin. Admiral Jaewon arrived at the station within days. He was Earth's highest-ranking military officer in this sector. He was a veteran of Earth's last wars, old enough to remember when humans still fought each other. He gathered the staff in the main conference room. Kyung-Soo joined via hologram from a Galactic Council emergency meeting. "The Rendari are real," Jaewon said without preamble. And they're coming. They've already taken 7 systems. They're moving toward the core worlds. What do they want? Jiwoo asked. To break everything, Kyung-soo said from the hologram. That's all they do. The ancient records are incomplete, but every species that encountered them was destroyed. Not killed, broken. Their societies collapsed. Their cultures vanished. They forgot how to be unified. How do you fight something like that? Woo Jin asked. The last time? Kyung-soo said. You didn't. Species just fled until the Rendari left on their own. But there's nowhere to flee to now. The galaxy is fully settled. The galactic fleet mobilized. Ships from every species gathered to face the threat. But there was immediate conflict. The conservative faction, the ones who had opposed human healing methods, demanded traditional military doctrine. Hit hard, show strength. Don't show weakness, but the Rendari couldn't be fought that way. Every fleet that engaged them fell apart. Not from firepower, but from internal collapse. The Rendari had weapons that broke minds, shattered trust, dissolved coordination. They turned fleets against themselves. The casualties started pouring in. Not just physical injuries, but psychological ones. Soldiers who couldn't remember their own names. Captains who were terrified of their own crews. Engineers who had forgotten how their own ships worked. The medical station became overwhelmed within days. Taemin, Ji-woo, and their teams worked around the clock. But this was different from anything they had faced before. The Rendari didn't just wound, they unmade people. Da-yun found herself treating hundreds of patients with psychological breaks. It was like nothing she had ever seen. These weren't normal trauma responses. The Rendari had somehow attacked the foundations of consciousness itself. They're targeting what makes us who we are, she told the others. Our memories. Our relationships. Our sense of self. They're breaking people at a fundamental level. Can you fix it? Jaewon asked. Yoon looked exhausted. I don't know. I'm trying. But there are so many, and they're so broken. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The conservative faction argued for abandoning the wounded. We need every able-bodied soldier, a Morvesh general said. We can't waste time and resources on the broken ones. Kyung-soo stood up. That's exactly what the Rendari want. They want us to abandon each other. To stop caring about the wounded. To become as heartless as they are? Being heartless might be how we survive, the general shot back. No, Kyung-soo said firmly. Being heartless is how we lose. The Rendari break societies by making people give up on each other. If we do that willingly, we've already lost. The argument continued for hours. Meanwhile, more ships arrived at human stations. More wounded. More broken minds and bodies. The humans refused to turn anyone away. Jiwoo performed emergency surgery on a Talvarian whose biology had been somehow rewritten by Rendari weapons. The changes were systematic, designed to make the body attack itself. She had to figure out what the original biology looked like and restore it, all while the patient was dying. She succeeded. Barely, then the next patient arrived. Hyun-woo faced a different challenge. Ships that had encountered the Rendari came back with their systems corrupted. Not just damaged, actively working against their crews. He had to find the corruption and remove it, without destroying the ship's core functions. One Vraxian captain watched him work. Our engineers couldn't fix this, the captain said. They said the ship was contaminated, that we should destroy it. Ships aren't just metal and circuits, Hyun-woo said as he worked. They're systems built with purpose. The Rendari added confusion to the purpose. I'm just removing the confusion. The captain looked thoughtful. You don't just repair. You restore. Same thing, Hyun-woo said. But it wasn't, and they both knew it. The fleet was losing. Every engagement ended in chaos. The Rendari were getting closer to the core worlds. Panic was spreading. Some species were preparing to flee. Others were arguing for surrender, though no one knew if the Rendari even accepted surrender. Jaewon coordinated the defense, but he was fighting a losing battle. Not just against the Rendari, but against internal divisions. The conservative faction was gaining support. They argued that the human way, all this focus on healing and saving everyone, had made the fleet weak. "We spent resources on the wounded that should have gone to weapons," one general argued. "We taught soldiers to feel and process trauma instead of just fighting. We made them soft." "You made them human," Jaewon said quietly. "And maybe that's what we need." 3 months into the conflict, a massive wave of casualties hit the station. A fleet of 200 ships had engaged the Rendari. Fewer than 50 ships escaped. Those that did were full of wounded, both physical and mental. Tae-Min stood in the triage area and felt his heart sink. There were too many. Even with all the staff, all the facilities they had built, there were too many. "We have to prioritize," a senior medic said. "Save who we can." "Let the others go." "No," Tae-Min said. "Tae-Min, be reasonable." "No." His voice was stronger now. "We don't give up. We've never given up. We're not starting now." He called in every favor. Every allied species sent medics. The humans taught emergency protocols on the fly. They worked faster than they had ever worked before, without sacrificing care. They refused to triage. They refused to abandon anyone. It was impossible. They did it anyway. Yoon barely slept for a week. She moved from patient to patient, helping minds that had been shattered piece themselves back together. She used every technique she knew and invented new ones. Other counselors followed her example. Ji-woo performed 63 surgeries in 5 days. She lost track of time, of the species she was treating, of everything except the next patient. Her hands shook when she finally stopped. But every patient she had operated on was alive. Hyun-woo repaired ships that should have been scrapped. He worked until his vision blurred, then kept working. When he finally collapsed from exhaustion, other engineers carried on his methods. The galaxy watched. They saw humans refuse to give up. They saw humans save patients that everyone else would have abandoned. They saw humans holding the line not with weapons, but with determination and care. Something shifted. Species that had been skeptical started sending support. The conservative faction lost ground as people saw the results. Wounded soldiers returned to fight, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to protect the people who had saved them, but the Rendari kept coming. They were closing in on the core worlds now, and the fleet was running out of time. Jaewon stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display. The Rendari would reach the major population centers within a month. They needed a new strategy. Something different. That's when Kyung-soo called with an idea that seemed insane. "What if we don't try to fight them?" He said, "What if we try to heal them?" The silence on the command channel was deafening. Then, slowly, people started to understand what he meant. The Rendari broke things, but humans fixed things. What if the Rendari themselves were broken? "That's suicide," a general said. "Maybe," Kyung-soo replied. "But so is everything else we've tried, and this is what we're good at. This is what we know how to do." Tae-Min listened to the conversation and felt something click into place. "He's right," he said. "We need to try." Jaewon looked at his tactical display, at the approaching threat, at the fleet that was barely holding together, at the humans who refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. "All right," he said. "Let's try to fix the unfixable, again." The plan was formed in desperation. They would need everyone. Every medic, every counselor, every engineer. They would need the entire fleet to hold the line long enough. And they would need to make contact with the Rendari, the beings that broke everything they touched. It was impossible. But humans had made a habit of doing impossible things. Diane arrived at the station on a rainy transport ship, metaphorically speaking. Space didn't have rain, but the ship's crew looked like they had been through a storm. She could see it in their eyes. The emptiness. The distance. The wounds that didn't show on scanners. She was a counselor specializing in trauma. Earth had sent her because the medical station was getting more requests for psychological help. Apparently, the galaxy was starting to understand that some wounds weren't physical. Her first patient was a Vraxian soldier. He sat in her office, his massive frame barely fitting in the chair. His exoskeleton was intact. His body was healthy, but his eyes were wrong. "I don't understand why I'm here," he said. His voice was flat. "I am not injured." Dayan smiled gently. "Tell me about your last battle." The Vraxian stared at her for a long moment. Then he began to talk. The words came slowly at first, then faster. He had been fighting for 30 years. He had seen friends die. He had killed enemies. He had followed orders. He had done his duty, and now? Daeyun asked. "Now I can't sleep. I see their faces. The enemies I killed. Some of them were young. Cubs, maybe? I tell myself they were enemies. That I had to. But I see them every night." "That sounds very painful," Daeyun said. The Vraxian made a sound like grinding metal. "Vraxians do not feel pain like this. We are warriors. We are strong." "Strength doesn't mean not feeling pain," Daeyun said. "Strength means surviving despite the pain. You've survived 30 years of war. That takes incredible strength. But maybe it's time to heal now." "Heal?" The Vraxian looked confused. "How do you heal something like this?" "One day at a time," Yoon said. "Just like your body heals from wounds. Your mind can heal too. But you have to let it." Over the following weeks, Daeyun saw dozens of patients. Not just Vraxians, but Keltharians with anxiety from traumatic accidents, Talvirians with depression from isolation, Morvesh with PTSD from combat. The galaxy, she realized, was full of psychological wounds that nobody had been treating. Other species had concepts of mental health, but many treated it as weakness. Soldiers were expected to be strong. Survivors were expected to move on. Nobody talked about the invisible scars. Yin taught them that talking helped. That processing trauma was necessary. That acknowledging pain wasn't weakness. It was the first step to healing. One evening, she sat with Taemin in the cafeteria. He looked exhausted as always. She wondered if he knew he was burning out. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep going when the patients never stop coming?" Taemin was quiet for a moment. "Do you know Earth's history?" he asked. "Some of it. We almost destroyed ourselves. Multiple times. Wars, pollution, hatred. We came so close to extinction that we could see the edge." Taemin's hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "But we survived. We learned. We put ourselves back together. Every human alive is descended from people who survived the worst and chose to rebuild." "So you understand being broken?" Yoon said softly. "Yes, we understand being broken. And we understand that broken things can be fixed. It's in our history, our culture, our bones." Taemin looked at her. "That's why we can't give up on patients. Because we know what it's like to be the patient everyone else gave up on." "You thought about that for a long time?" She began incorporating it into her therapy sessions. She told patients about Earth's history, about how humans had nearly destroyed their own planet, about the wars, the suffering, the mistakes, and then she told them about the healing, about how humans had stopped fighting long enough to fix what was broken, about how they had cleaned their planet, ended their wars, and learned to work together. "You've been in pain for so long," a Talvarian patient said one day. "How did you survive?" "By refusing to believe that pain was permanent," Daeyun said. "By choosing to heal even when it seemed impossible." Kyung-soo arrived at the station 3 months after Daeyun. He was a diplomat sent by Earth to manage the growing political situation. The station was no longer just a medical facility. It was becoming a political symbol. He attended a Galactic Council meeting via hologram. The council chambers were massive, filled with representatives from 100 species. Kyung-soo stood in the human section, which felt very small. "The human presence is growing too large," a Morvesh council member said. "You now have the largest medical facility in the sector. You are treating thousands of patients from dozens of species. You are gaining influence." "We're treating patients who need help," Kyung-soo said calmly. "Is that a crime?" "It is not a crime," the Morvesh said. "But it is a change. Change makes people nervous. Especially," another council member added, when that change involves species becoming dependent on human aid. Kyung-soo took a breath. We don't want anyone to be dependent. We're teaching other species our techniques. We're sharing our knowledge freely. Our goal is to help everyone learn to heal better. Why? The question came from a Caltharian council member. Why do you care so much? What do you gain? It was a fair question. Kyung-soo had known it would come eventually. Can I show you something? He asked. He pulled up historical records from Earth, images of war, of devastation, of cities turned to rubble, of humans hurting humans in every way possible. The council watched in silence. This is our history, Kyung-soo said. We spent thousands of years breaking each other. We were very good at it. We nearly made ourselves extinct multiple times. He changed the images. Now they showed hospitals, reconstruction, peace treaties, humans working together. Then we learned something. We learned that breaking things is easy. Building things is hard. And fixing things? Fixing things is the hardest of all. But it's also the most important. He looked around the council chamber. You ask what we gain. We gain the satisfaction of knowing that what almost destroyed us, our capacity for violence, we've turned into a capacity for healing. We gain the knowledge that we're using our skills to build instead of destroy. That's what we gain. The council was silent for a long moment. Finally, the Caltharian member spoke. You're trying to redeem yourselves. Maybe, Kyung-soo said. Or maybe we just learned a lesson we want to share. You don't have to accept our help, but we're going to keep offering it. But not everyone was convinced. A coalition of conservative species began forming. They argued that the human philosophy was dangerous, that it made soldiers soft, that accepting help from humans was shameful. They called it the weakness doctrine. They said humans were corrupting the strong military traditions of the galaxy, that all this focus on healing and feelings would make everyone vulnerable to real threats. An assassination attempt came 3 weeks later. Kyung-soo was visiting a newly opened human medical facility on a Vraxian world when someone fired a weapon at him. The shot missed because a Vraxian soldier, one of the first cubs that Taemin had saved, now grown, had pushed Kyung-soo out of the way. The young Vraxian stood between Kyung-soo and the attacker. You will not harm the healer, the Vraxian said. Security captured the attacker. He was a member of an extremist group that opposed human influence. During interrogation, he revealed that there were more like him. Many more. Kyung-soo met with his staff that evening. Taemin, Ji-woo, Hyun-woo, Da-yoon, and Captain Woo-jin all sat around a table looking worried. Maybe we should slow down, Woo-jin said. If we're creating this much opposition. No, Taemin's voice was firm. Stopping now means everyone who opposes healing wins. It means patients who need help won't get it. He's right, Yoon said. Opposition means we're threatening the status quo. The status quo is that broken things stay broken. We can't accept that. Woo nodded. Every patient I save is a victory against that mindset. I'm not stopping. Hyun-woo smiled. Every ship I repair carries people who might spread the message further. I'm not stopping either. Kyung-soo looked at them all. They were tired. They were stressed. They were in danger now. But they weren't backing down. Then we continue, he said. But carefully. We need to be smart about this. The opposition grew louder, but so did the support. Species that had been helped by humans began speaking up. The Vraxians, whose cubs had been saved, became strong advocates. The Caltharians, whose injured had been healed, supported human methods. Others joined them. It was becoming clear that the galaxy was dividing into two camps. Those who believed in healing and those who believed healing made you weak. Yoon worked with more soldiers, helping them process trauma. Many broke down in her office, crying or shaking or screaming. They had held pain inside for years, sometimes decades. Letting it out was agonizing, but afterward they felt lighter. They could sleep again. They could think clearly. They could remember why they had fought in the first place, to protect, not just to destroy. You're changing us, one Morvesh soldier told her. My whole unit is different now. We still fight when we must. But we fight to protect, not to harm. We fight to end conflicts, not to continue them. That's not me changing you, Dune said. That's you choosing to heal. The galaxy was learning what humans had learned centuries ago, that being broken was not the end. That healing was possible. That strength and vulnerability could coexist, but the lesson was hard. And some refused to learn it. They saw healing as weakness, compassion as foolishness, and humans as a threat. The real test was still coming. The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. While the fleet held the line, a small team would approach the Rendari directly. Not to fight. To communicate. To understand. To heal. Dayun volunteered immediately. If they're breaking minds, I need to understand how. Maybe I can reach whatever consciousness they have. Pei Wu and Haiyan Wu volunteered next. If the Rendari were partly biological, partly technological, they would need both medical and engineering expertise. Tae-Min simply said, I'm going. Don't argue. Kyung-Soo wanted to go too, but Jaewon refused. Someone needs to coordinate from here. Someone the fleet trusts? That's you. They chose a small ship, fast and maneuverable. The crew was minimal, just the 4 humans and a pilot. The pilot was the young Vraxian that Tae-Min had saved years ago, now a skilled officer. You saved my life, the Vraxian said. I will help you save others. They named the mission Hope. Some people said it was ironic. Others said it was perfect. The fleet prepared for the largest coordinated defense in galactic history. Every species contributed ships. Even the conservative faction joined, though they made it clear they expected the mission to fail. When you die, a Morvesh general told Kyung-Soo, we will fight the proper way. We won't die, Kyung-Soo said. He hoped he sounded more confident than he felt. The small ship launched 3 days later. The fleet engaged the Rendari forces, drawing them into battle. It was brutal. Ships broke apart not from weapons fire, but from internal collapse. The Rendari were winning, as they always won, but the fleet held barely, desperately, giving the small ship time to slip through as they approached the center of Rendari space. The team saw something incredible. The Rendari weren't ships. They were structures. Massive, ancient structures that bent space around them. They looked organic and mechanical at the same time, like someone had tried to build cities out of pain. They're beautiful, Jiwoo whispered. In a terrible way. Daeyeon was scanning for signals. I'm picking up something. It's not radio or standard communication. It's like screaming. Continuous screaming on every frequency. That's what they're broadcasting. Han-Woo asked. No, Daeyeon said, her voice shaking. That's what they are. The Rendari aren't breaking things out of malice. They're breaking things because they're in pain. Constant, endless pain. The revelation hit them all. The Rendari weren't evil. They were wounded, broken, and they had been broken for so long that breaking others was all they knew how to do. We need to make contact, Tae-Min said. Let them know we're here to help. They sent a message on every channel. Not a threat. Not a plea. Just a simple statement. We fix broken things. Can we help you? The response came as a wave of force that nearly tore the ship apart. The Rendari were curious, and angry, and afraid. Emotions so powerful they became weapons. Ga-Yun closed her eyes and focused. She opened her mind to the signal, to the screaming. It nearly broke her. She saw visions of an ancient war billions of years ago. The Rendari had been healers once, and they had created wonders. They had helped entire civilizations grow. Then came the war. An enemy whose name was lost to time. An enemy that used the Rendari's compassion against them. Made them watch as everything they had built was destroyed. Everyone they had helped was killed. And then, as a final cruelty, changed the Rendari themselves. Made them into engines of destruction. The Rendari had been transformed into the opposite of what they were. Healers made into breakers. And they had been that way for so long they had forgotten what they used to be? Yun spoke, her words transmitted through every channel. I understand. You were broken. And you've been breaking others because that's all you remember how to do. But you were healers once. We know. Because we were like you. She showed them Earth's history, humanity's wars, the destruction, the near extinction, and then the healing, the choice to become something different. We were broken too, Yun said. We hurt ourselves and others. But we learned to heal. We learned to fix what was broken. We can help you remember. The Rendari's response was chaos. Some wanted to destroy them. Others were confused. Just a few were listening. Ji Wu and Hyon Wu worked together, scanning the Rendari structures, looking for the systems that caused the pain. The structures were incredibly complex, a fusion of biology and technology that shouldn't exist. It's like a feedback loop, Hyon Wu said. Their pain generates the breaking effect, and the breaking effect causes more pain. They're trapped in a cycle. Can we break the cycle? Ji Wu asked. Maybe, if we can reach the core systems. But we'd need to get inside? A Rendari structure opened. An invitation. Or a trap. Either way, it was their only chance. They went inside, leaving the Vraxian pilot with the ship. The interior was both familiar and alien. It reminded Taemin of a hospital, but one designed by someone who had forgotten what hospitals were for. They found the core. It was massive, pulsing with energy and pain. At the center was something that might have been organic once. Now it was barely recognizable, twisted by billions of years of corruption. This is what they became, Yiwu whispered. This is the wound. Dayun approached it carefully. She could feel the pain radiating from it. Thousands of voices, all screaming. The original Rendari, trapped in their own transformation, unable to escape. We're going to help you, she said softly. It's going to hurt. Healing always hurts at first, but you don't have to carry this pain anymore. Yi Wu and Hyon Wu began working. They mapped the systems, finding the points where the corruption was strongest, the feedback loops that kept the pain going. One by one, they began to disrupt them. The Rendari fought back. Not intentionally, but instinctively, like a wounded animal lashing out at someone trying to help. The ship shook. Alarms blared. The fleet was being pushed back, but Taemin kept working. His hands were steady as he helped remove the corrupted systems. Years of practice, of refusing to give up on patience, of believing that anything broken could be fixed. It all came together now. Dayun talked to the Rendari consciousness, reminded them of what they had been, showed them that healing was still possible, that they could change. That being broken wasn't permanent. You taught the galaxy to heal by destroying it, she said. But you can teach it something better now. You can teach it that even the most broken things can be restored. Even you, something shifted. The screaming began to quiet. The pain began to ease. And slowly, incredibly, the Rendari started to remember. They had been healers. They had been builders. They had been good. The corruption began to dissolve. Not quickly, this would take time. Maybe decades. Maybe centuries. But it was beginning. The cycle was breaking. The Rendari structures stopped their attack. The breaking effect ceased. Across the galaxy, ships that had been tearing themselves apart suddenly stabilized. Soldiers who had forgotten who they were started to remember. The team returned to their ship, exhausted but alive. As they flew back toward the fleet, they saw something impossible. The Rendari structures were changing, slowly reforming into something that looked less like weapons and more like the healing stations they had once been. The Vraxian pilot looked at them with awe. You did it. You fixed them. We started the healing, Taemin corrected. They have to finish it themselves. But yes, we helped. The return to the fleet was triumphant. Species that had been ready to flee or surrender now celebrated. The impossible had happened. The ancient enemy had been not defeated, but healed. Kyung-Su met them at the station. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a week. The Rendari are communicating, he said. Real communication. They're asking for help. They want to learn how to heal again. Then we teach them, Yun said. That's what we do. The aftermath took months to fully understand. The Rendari had been breaking civilizations for billions of years. Now they wanted to restore them, but they had forgotten how. They needed teachers. Humans volunteered by the thousands. Not just medics and engineers, but counselors, teachers, and regular people. They went to the Rendari structures and began the long process of teaching them to heal. The Rendari learned slowly. They struggled with concepts like patience and compassion. But they tried. And some of them began to succeed. The galaxy changed. Military doctrine was rewritten. Every fleet now included medical ships and counselors. The idea of abandoning the wounded became unthinkable. Species that had seen humans as weak now saw them as strong in ways they hadn't understood. The conservative faction didn't disappear, but they lost influence. It was hard to argue against healing when healing had saved the galaxy. Tay-Min returned to the medical station, now expanded into a massive complex. The Vraxian cubs he had saved years ago, now adults, worked there as medics. They had learned from humans and were teaching others. Grua ran a training program, teaching alien doctors the surgical techniques that had saved thousands. Her students came from every species, eager to learn. Hyun-Wu developed a new shipbuilding philosophy. Ships weren't just vessels of war anymore. They were systems designed to be repaired, to be maintained, to last. Other species adopted his methods. Yun created the galaxy's first interspecies counseling network. Soldiers from every fleet could now access psychological support. The stigma around mental health began to fade. Kyung-Su became Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. He worked to formalize the new philosophy.